One year I visited the Jewish Museum in Sydney, a fascinating place. I mean, I've always been very interested in Jewish history, and I have to say I was drawn to the Holocaust section of that exhibition, and I came out of one section which is devoted to the children, and if you haven't been there, there's a whole wall of photos, again with spaces where they can't find photos of the children, the over a million children who were murdered at Auschwitz and other camps. And as you walk out, there is a statue of children's shoes that have been all put together, and they're being cast in white. And then there is a very large pool, and instead of the drops of water dropping down, I don't know how they do it, but the drop goes up, and then when it hits the water again, it just ripples, and it's meant to represent all the children that were being killed. And I walked out of that, and for once in my life, I was really lost for words. And I sat down, and a lady came up to me, and she just said, "Are you okay?" And I recognised her from the videos that they show at various terminals around the Holocaust exhibition, and I recognised her as one of the survivors from Auschwitz. And I said to her, how do you come away from this and not be so filled with hatred?" And she just looked at me and said, "Oh, then we're no better than they are." And then I looked at the rest of the exhibition. Then I went down, and Carl had gone down to have a cup of coffee, and I went up and I ordered a cup of tea, and I'm sitting there, and next minute this lady comes over, and she said, and please excuse the German accent, but she said, "What are you drinking?" And I said, "Tea." She said, "Are you sick?" And I said, "No." She said, "No, no, 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 no. My papa always say, you only drink tea when you are sick. Now, if you are not sick, then you drink cafe." And I said, "Oh, well, look, I really do like tea." And then I noticed her number tattooed on her wrist. And she said, "Can I join you?" And I said, "Yes, that would be really nice." And so she then started to tell me her story. And she and her whole family were interned in Auschwitz, and she lost all her family. She's the only survivor. And she said that the only thing that really saved her sanity at the end of the war, she was asked to be a witness at the Nuremberg trials. And there's a photo of her there at the Nuremberg trials, this young woman. And I put the same question to her as I did to the other lady. How do you come away from this and not be filled with hatred and revenge and wanting to get back at people? And she said, "Darling, no, 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 you can't do that, because then I am no better than the people who put me there. And I don't want to go to my maker. I don't want to go to my God filled with vengeance. I have forgiven them. I can't forget. And I don't think anybody should forget, because she actually said that very famous phrase, if you forget your history, then it repeats itself. And I think that's quite true. But she was such a lovely woman, and she said, "Have you got a book?" And I said, "What, from here?" And she goes, "Yeah, my book." And so Lottie got me her book, and she signed it. And we just had a lovely time at the Jewish Museum. It sort of lifted my spirits. And when I told her that, she just gave me this lovely, benign smile. And I thought, oh, this is the sort of person that you want to meet in your life, because it makes a difference. Yeah.
Wonderful. Did you want to also tell the story now about the trench?
The trench, yes. Going through Ypres on my battlefield tour, Christopher took us to this trench, and he said, "This is a German trench." And it has been suggested, just looking at historical evidence, that Hitler could have been in this trench. And he was quite brave in World War One. He received the Iron Cross Second Class. I think that was the classification. He saved a couple of officers, I think, from in a battle, taking one wounded man, I think, back to the German trench. And we were actually standing in the trench. And when you look out, again, you see this flat ground, and you can just see how easy it was to kill the British soldiers, because the machine guns would be mounted on the trench, and the Australians and the Canadians and the British and the French and the Belgians would be given the order to charge, and they would to face these dreadful machine guns. And when Christopher was telling me how heroic Hitler was, I just turned to him and said, well, I'm really glad he got the Iron Cross Second Class, but it doesn't wipe out the horror of World War II. And I don't think anything will ever wipe out that horror. And Christopher then told me that after we looked at the German cemetery, which is so dark and so black and so unforgiving, he just said, the Germans don't come here to this part of Belgium, and it's not what happened during World War One, because they were held in high regard for being good soldiers. In the Second World War, the Gestapo came here and murdered over 2,000 children. And that just left me, again, speechless. And I just have no pity for Hitler and his cohorts. I don't care. I'm a Christian, supposedly, where you're supposed to forgive. And one of these days, I suppose, I might find it in my heart to be a bit kinder. I don't think so, though, because when you think of the millions, not only of Jewish people, but political prisoners, the insane, any disabled person that wasn't perfect, were just wiped out in World War II. But when you go back to World War One, the carnage in the trenches and on the battlefields of World War One certainly, I think, is worse than any battle in World War II. And look, that's just from my very personal, humble, just a witness to the results of that conflict. I think so many of the men that went to war were farm boys from England and from Australia. You go to any English village and they have memorials to World War One, and there were no men left in some of those villages, only boys and old men. No, whole generations of people, men were wiped out. And in those days, if you were brothers, 4, 5, 6 brothers would all enlist in the one regiment. So you could have a whole family wiped out in one battle in 5 minutes. Saving Private Ryan, that film about World War II, that doesn't happen anymore. You don't get into the same unit as your siblings. I think they even might take it further to people in your own town if a war is declared and people sign up. I don't think that happens anymore. Though, mind you, we don't have world conflict. We only have invading other countries. But I just think World War One is just such a slaughter. It is like a charnel house, and I don't think I will ever lose that dreadful feeling of horror and waste, and the ineptitude of leaders most of the officers were trained, from the Napoleonic times, way back when, soldiers were advanced in 2 lines, one kneeling, one standing, and then, when the standing guys fired, they then knelt down, and the ones that were kneeling down stood up, and that's how they progressed in their battle. And I think some of the mindset in World War One was so like that, where they even had horses. I mean, you had cavalry charging against machine guns. to my mind, in the 21st century, it just seems amazing that anybody would think that would work.
Mm.
But I think the arrogance of the Brits, and they were incredibly arrogant. The Australian army, they were literally farm boys. They could ride a horse. They could shoot a gun. I mean, I have family who live in the country, and my cousins were all taught how to shoot a gun from a very early age. And guns were treated with incredible respect. You never found the ammunition next to the gun. And but the boys were all taught in case a snake came into the house, or so they were prepared.
Mm.
But shooting something to eat and shooting a human being, I think, must be very, very difficult. And I think a lot of those people in World War One, particularly, they went away and were hoping to get back by Christmas.
Mm.
So, but each war has its heroes, and each war has its hideous actions. And I still don't.